Right now, if you get a fever, you know exactly what to do. You take some Tylenol, you drink water, you wait it out. If it gets bad enough, you go to urgent care. And within an hour, someone with a medical degree is looking down your throat with a flashlight. You have antibiotics in your medicine cabinet right now that can kill bacteria that used to kill entire villages. 10,000 years ago, none of that existed. No antibiotics, no vaccines, no germ theory, no understanding that invisible organisms were even a thing. If you got sick, there was no Tylenol, no doctor, no hospital, just you, your symptoms, and whatever your tribe believed was happening inside your body. And here's the question that doesn't get asked enough. How did anyone survive? Let's start with what they actually believed was making them sick, because they didn't think bacteria, they didn't think viruses. For almost all of human history, illness wasn't biological. It was personal. Most ancient cultures believed sickness was caused by something with intention behind it. An angry spirit, a broken taboo, a curse from an enemy. Sometimes the soul itself had wandered off, and the sickness was simply the body running without it. This sounds primitive to modern ears, but think about what they were actually doing with that belief. If illness has a cause, even a wrong one, you can respond to it. You can act. And ancient humans built entire systems of healing around exactly that idea. The person responsible for healing in most ancient societies wasn't just a doctor. They were a shaman, a medicine man, a healer who combined psychology, botany, and ritual into one role. And here's what's strange. A lot of what they did actually worked, not because the spiritual explanation was correct, but because the plants they used contained real active compounds. And those plants were genuinely sophisticated. Researchers have found medicinal plant residue on ancient tools and in burial sites going back tens of thousands of years. Willow bark, which contains a compound chemically related to aspirin, was used across multiple ancient cultures to treat pain and fever. Garlic showed up constantly. Modern science has confirmed it has real antibacterial and antifungal properties. Honey was packed directly into wounds, and we now know honey creates an environment hostile to most bacteria. It was essentially a primitive antibiotic, discovered through trial and error thousands of years before anyone understood what bacteria were. This is the part that surprises people the most. Ancient humans weren't guessing randomly. Generation after generation, they were running an enormous, uncontrolled experiment. Try a plant. Watch what happens. If people got better, remember it. Pass it down. If people got worse, never touch that plant again. It was slow. It was brutal in its method, but it worked often enough that real medical knowledge accumulated over thousands of years, long before anyone wrote anything down. But plants alone weren't the whole system, because ancient humans also figured out something we now consider basic medical procedure: removing what's broken. Researchers have found skulls thousands of years old with clean, deliberate holes drilled into them. This procedure is called trepanation, and remarkably, many of these skulls show signs of healing. That means the person didn't just survive the surgery, they lived for years afterward. Nobody is entirely sure why they did this. Some researchers think it was used to relieve pressure from head injuries. Others think it was meant to treat seizures or severe headaches. Whatever the reasoning, the execution required real anatomical knowledge and steady hands, performed with stone tools, with no anesthesia beyond whatever plants or rituals they had access to. This wasn't guesswork. This was surgery, and it tells you something important. Ancient humans weren't passively waiting to die when they got sick. They were actively intervening, testing, adjusting, and improving, using the only tools and knowledge available to them. Now, here's where survival actually got dangerous. Not the illness itself. What came after it? Because here's the brutal truth about ancient medicine. Without antibiotics, a small cut could become a death sentence. There was no way to stop bacteria once it took hold. This is why something as simple as a broken bone was genuinely life-threatening. Not because the break itself was fatal, but because the open wound that often came with it had no real defense against infection. So ancient healers focused on what they could actually control, cleaning wounds with whatever they had. Some cultures used alcohol from fermented drinks, others packed wounds with honey. Some used specific clays with naturally antibacterial properties. They were fighting an enemy they couldn't see, using tools that by sheer trial and error sometimes actually worked against it. And here's the part that flips everything you assume. Most of history's deadliest diseases didn't exist for them yet. Smallpox, measles, the flu, even the bubonic plague. Almost all of these are zoonotic diseases, meaning they jump to humans from animals. And that jump mostly happened after agriculture began, when humans started living in permanent settlements packed closely together, surrounded by domesticated animals, which means in some ways your hunter-gatherer ancestors were less exposed to large-scale disease than the farmers who came after them. Small, mobile groups meant outbreaks had nowhere to spread. If someone got sick, the group's own scattered way of living acted as natural isolation. Agriculture changed everything. Bigger populations, closer contact, animals living right next to humans. Suddenly, diseases had fuel they never had before. So in a strange way, the moment humans started building civilization is the same moment they got dramatically sicker. So how did anyone survive long enough for any of this to matter? The honest answer is that a huge number of them didn't. Researchers studying ancient skeletal remains suggest child mortality in many prehistoric populations was brutally high. Infections, parasites, malnutrition during hard seasons, all of it took a constant toll. But the people who did survive developed something modern humans rarely think about. Resilience built through exposure. Constant contact with parasites, bacteria, and minor illnesses meant their immune systems were trained early and often. Researchers studying the few remaining hunter-gatherer populations today have found their immune systems show patterns strikingly different from people living in modern, highly sanitized environments. Some scientists believe this might explain part of why allergies and autoimmune conditions are far less common in these populations. It's not that ancient life was healthier overall. It clearly wasn't. But the specific kind of exposure they had shaped human biology in ways we're still trying to fully understand. So what does all of this actually tell us? It tells us something we don't give ancient humans enough credit for. They weren't helpless. They were resourceful in the most literal sense, building real medical knowledge with absolutely none of the tools we take for granted today. They identified painkillers in tree bark. They found antibacterial properties in honey and garlic, centuries before anyone understood what bacteria even were. They performed actual surgery on the human skull and kept people alive afterward. They built entire systems of knowledge, refined slowly, brutally, generation after generation, through nothing but observation and consequence. It wasn't modern medicine. It wasn't even close. But it was the foundation modern medicine was eventually built on top of. Every time you take an aspirin, you're holding a refined, perfected version of something a tribal healer figured out from willow bark thousands of years before written history existed. You didn't invent that knowledge, you inherited it.